The Raiders have their new offensive coordinator. Well, at least they're in the red zone when it comes to hiring their offensive coordinator. Matter of fact, they might be on the 5-yard line ready to punch it in. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 2nd, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, that's awesome. We definitely appreciate that. The show has grown in a major way. That's because of you and my man, Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day. We definitely want to shout him out. Check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. That's 707-654-4693. A lot of feedback that we'll get in segment number 3, conversations about offensive coordinators, conversation about quarterbacks, and just general direction that the Raiders are going. That's coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, as I mentioned, offensive coordinators and the fact that the Raiders are on the goal line pretty much, ready to hire their next guy in Kliff Kingsbury, the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinal and USC assistant, a guy that the Raiders have already interviewed multiple times. Looks like he's going to be the guy to call the shots as far as the offense goes for the Raiders. It's not a done deal yet, but it's very, very close. Aaron Wilson, he covers the NFL and covers the Texans for KPRC Channel 2 in Houston. Used to be part of the Houston Chronicle, working with my guy, John McClain. Actually broke the news on Twitter on Thursday, and immediately after he put it out there on Twitter, I had him on my radio show. So you hear the conversation. You'll hear why the Raiders are leaning in the direction of Kliff Kingsbury, and it looks like that they're going to hire him as their offensive coordinator. You'll hear all that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and obviously the Kliff Kingsbury news is the biggest, but we got plenty to get to in this segment, so we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So off top, as I mentioned, Aaron Wilson from KPRC Channel 2 in Houston tweeted out on Thursday afternoon, Raiders frontrunner for offensive coordinator is Kliff Kingsbury per league sources, as Antonio Pierce fills out his staff, which also includes Marvin Lewis as assistant head coach. So there you go. We have been talking about the offensive coordinator for quite a while, and I went on a big conversation, a big kind of rant on it on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, that I felt like, okay, Clint Kubiak is probably going to be the guy. They're going to wait for after the Super Bowl, and that's going to be that. And, of course, as soon as I say that, well, that's when they go and hire somebody else, which is always the inevitable. That's how it always happens. So I guess I just need to talk it into existence, and whatever I guess I don't want to happen, but when I want something to happen sooner rather than later, basically say it's not going to happen, and then it does. But Kliff Kingsbury looks like he's going to be the guy. I think that is a great sign for multiple reasons. He's a guy that is an offensive creative mind. He's a guy that's been a head coach in the NFL. He's been a head coach in college. He knows these young quarterbacks. He knows how to get the most out of these young quarterbacks. And again, he was a head coach, so it's more experience on that coaching staff with Antonio Pierce, who does not have very much experience as an NFL head coach. So I think it's a good thing. I know when I had Alex Clancy on from Locked On Cards, he wasn't too convincing that Kliff Kingsbury was a sharp offensive mind. He said that he's got it in there, but just hadn't seen it enough in Arizona. So obviously Kliff has a lot to prove with the Raiders if and when they do go ahead and sign him and make it official. But also, I just think that, that's a good sign that the Raiders are really trying to be aggressive. They want to make sure that their offense is a lot better than it was in 2023. AP said he wanted to score 24 points. It's just about what Kliff Kingsbury's teams were scoring. But, it's funny because he has I want to say the air raid, but it's really just a version of the air raid, led by Hal Mummy. Art Briles, who was at Baylor, he had a version of it as well. Mike Leach, obviously, rest in peace. He had a version of it as well. It all kind of comes from the same tree. They just have their own branches. But The run game has always been a very important part of it. To have a successful offense that's led by Kliff Kingsbury and his style, he's got to be able to run the ball. And so Antonio Pierce wants to be able to run the ball. And, you look at guys like DeAndre Hopkins and you see the numbers that they had in Arizona as Kliff Kingsbury was the head coach, and you feel pretty good about, okay, well, Devontae Adams could put up those kind of numbers, if not better. But his first season as the head coach of the Cardinals, they were 19th in rushing attempts. Second season, 6th in rushing attempts. Third season, 7th in rushing attempts. So you can see that he wants to run the ball. And again, it's very important that they do run the ball and run it to a level of success to be able to allow the rest of the elements of the offense to to be really good. Also, a thing that I thought was pretty interesting, a little stat that I saw in Kingsbury that I thought was pretty interesting. He has good production, I should say, in the red zone. Top 15 3 times from 2020 to 2022. In 2020, he was 10th in red zone offense, 2021 15th, and 2022 11th in red zone offense. So again, it's there. It can be pulled out if the right guys are there, if the right talent's around. He can get the most of them. I think those are really good signs. So Kliff Kingsbury, you'll hear more about him coming up in segment number 2 when I talk to Aaron Wilson, my conversation I had with him on my radio show on Thursday. Also, I found this to be pretty intriguing. Then this is from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. The Raiders interviewed former Browns head coach Hugh Jackson for an offensive staff position per source. Jackson has a long history with Marvin Lewis, who's set to join the Vegas staff. And it sounds like that would be like a senior assistant on the offensive side of things. Again, that's from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. And the one thing I could say is I know that Hugh Jackson is very interested in the job with the Raiders. He doesn't coach Grambling anymore. He got fired from Grambling, but I know for a fact that he's very interested in the Raiders, and he's very open to returning to the silver and black. And I didn't think that was really a possibility. I know that when the Raiders fired Hugh Jackson, it wasn't on great terms, but it sounds like, whatever issues were there are now no longer there. I don't know if that's an AP thing. I don't know if that's a Marvin Lewis thing. I don't know if that's a MD saying, I don't give a damn who's on the coaching staff as long as they can help this team win. I don't know, but it sounds like Hugh Jackson is a real possibility to return to the coaching staff of the Raiders, to be along with not in place of, but with Kliff Kingsbury and Marvin Lewis and Antonio Pierce. And the other thing, I think it's great that Marvin Lewis is the assistant head coach, because that's, again, more experience around Antonio Pierce. The fact that Antonio Pierce has enough humility and maturity to say, you know what I don't know, and I need some guys with some experience around me. I mean, think about that. Think of all the former head coaches that are around him. When you've got Marvin Lewis, who was a longtime head coach in the league, Kliff Kingsbury was the head coach in the NFL for a while, and they can help with in-game decisions. They can help with, throwing the challenge flag. They can help with, time management. I mean, there's all kind of good ideas that he can bounce off of all these guys, and they can give him his feedback. And again, to be able to humble yourself and say, you know what, I'm not going to act like I know everything in the room. I'm not that guy. I'm not that coach that says, hey, I don't need your help. I got this. I think that's awesome. I really do. And that just shows, again, the humility that AP has. And we saw it already during the regular season while he was the interim coach. When he brought in Marvin Lewis, he brought in Tom Coughlin, and he brought in Adam Gase. It looks like he's starting to put together a really good staff. I'm really pretty excited about that. This little note that I have for you, though, from Ian Rappaport, I found to be interesting. And someone actually called on the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line just the other day about this. He says that the Raiders interviewed UCLA coach Chip Kelly at least twice for their vacant OC job under Antonio Pierce. Kelly appeared open to a return to the NFL, but Pierce ultimately chose Kliff Kingsbury. That's interesting. Again, I hadn't heard that. I know that rumor was out there and that report was out there, but I hadn't heard that. So that's why I didn't speak on it, and I said that I don't know if that's a real deal thing or not. I'm glad that AP went with Kliff Kingsbury as opposed to Chip Kelly. I just don't know how that dynamic would work. But obviously there must have been some interest if they interviewed him twice. So that to me was pretty funny, and not funny. I guess that's the wrong way to put it, but it was just interesting that, that was a real deal thing, that they really did talk to Chip Kelly, I should say, not Champ Kelly. Champ Kelly is the assistant GM, but Chip Kelly. And it sounds like he's really trying to make a return to the NFL, even as an offensive coordinator. So maybe he ends up in Washington with the Commanders now that Dan Quinn is the head coach there. And I think that was a very underwhelming hiring by the Washington. But then again, it's Washington, and, well, what do you expect? So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Little news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, Aaron Wilson. He covers the NFL and the Texans for KPRC Channel 2 in Houston, talking all things Kliff Kingsbury. He is the one who broke the news. He is the one who put the tweet out first, and he joined my radio show on Thursday. You'll hear that conversation next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get right to that after I tell you about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be right around the corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. How about the 2024 Nissan Rogue? It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built in is your always updating assistant to call on for, well, almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Maps, Google Play Store, they're all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-side crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder, it's got room up to 8, expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is where to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into the conversation I had with Aaron Wilson from KPRC Channel 2 in Houston on Thursday on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, Raider Nation Radio 920. Aaron Wilson is the one that tweeted it out early. He was the one that was first on it, and I'm never one of those that cares about first, second, third, this, that, and the other. But, you know, he did put it out there. I know him really well. I shot him a text and was like, hey, man, could you come on the show to talk about what's going on and what you're hearing? He was like, yeah, no problem. 30 minutes later, boom, he was on the radio show. So it starts off, the conversation with Aaron Wilson from, again, KPRC Channel 2 in Houston, starts off with me reading the tweet that he put out and him responding. Here it is from Thursday. Raiders are the front runner for offensive coordinators Kliff Kingsbury per league sources as Antonio Pierce fills out his staff, which also includes Marvin Lewis as assistant head coach. So how much of a front runner, from what you're understanding, is Kliff Kingsbury right now?
But he's the leader, and that it's not close that he is out in front. So unless he does something or they change their mind, which always can happen in the NFL, but the way they feel about it, it's just been a good mesh. I think they see philosophically things similarly, him and Antonio Pierce, about how they want to attack, how they want to scheme it up. And I think he would be a great hire for the Raider Nation. Just like everything, deal always in the details, devil's always in the details, and you have to finish something, and it's not done yet. So they did get Marvin Lewis done as assistant head coach, and Kliff Kingsbury, not reporting he's hired, just reporting that he is the front runner, the leading candidate, and I would not be surprised at all if they get that done. I think that that's something that can happen, should happen, and maybe it will happen.
Is there another candidate that they've been looking at, or have they just been kind of in conversation with Kliff?
I'm not privy to all of the interviews that they've had or all of the conversations, or if they're going to talk to more people. I've just heard that Kliff is the guy and that he is the likely offensive coordinator for the Raiders. And he has a head coaching background, Texas Tech, and with the Arizona Cardinals. So, they moved on from Mick Lombardi. They had the interim guy with Bill Hardegree. They're looking for someone that they can aim higher for. I don't think the Chip Kelly thing really had a whole lot of legs. And you saw Arthur Smith's off the market now. So, yeah, I think they're just being picky and selective about what they're looking for, traits, the fit, and personality. And he does bring some good personality. I think that he'll be good with the locker room. He'll be good with quarterbacks, every position, because he's experienced. And I think he'll be a help to Antonio Pierce should this deal happen. Because Antonio, could use someone like that's been a head coach, that's been in other, situations, good and bad, that Kliff's been through. And I think Kliff is a creative guy as far as how he designs his game plans, his playbook, and I think it will mesh well with the talent that they have. You look at the high volume sometimes for a DeAndre Hopkins. I think that Devontae Adams would benefit from Kliff's presence. So I see a lot of positives in Kliff, and I think that he's got the pedigree, he's got the experience, he's got a long football background, he's a quarterback in the NFL. I think he could help the Raiders.
Again, we're speaking with Aaron Wilson here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. You can find Aaron on KPRC Channel 2 in Houston. And Marvin Lewis is also on your tweet as the assistant head coach. You mentioned him a minute ago. How beneficial do you think that hire is for the Raiders and Antonio Pierce in particular, since he doesn't have that experience as a head coach?
Very beneficial because Marvin, this takes me back to my very young days when he was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, and then before he became the Cincinnati Bengals head coach. So he was with Brian Billick. He has a great background. He's an outstanding leader, and he'll do nothing but support Antonio Pierce. But Marvin is a outstanding backstop of knowledge for Antonio and the other coaches on the staff, and he's also a great person. And I remember when Marvin was in Baltimore, they put together the historically best defense as far as the points allowed. The run defense was outstanding, and he was a big part of that. Obviously, coaching Hall of Famers like Ray Lewis and having talent like that, or Rod Woodson, that also helps. But you got to have the scheme, you got to have the motivational skills, and you got to have the acumen to connect with those players. And I think he'll do nothing but help the defense and the overall team, because he understands offense very well. Special teams, personnel matters. I think he'll be helpful to all parts of the building, and this is more like it, I think, with what they're doing. I think these guys will work well together because they have good relationships, and that's very important that you have that chemistry within the coaching staff. It's not just about chemistry with the players. It's about, what are these coaches like? They spend a lot of time together. Do they like working together? Do they spend time away from the office together? Do they go out to eat? Do they play golf together? Whatever it might be. And, I think what they're doing now, it just feels much more organic rather than this is my way or the highway type of deal. Maybe Josh wasn't entirely like that. He was a little bit like that. Josh McDaniels, who's out as head coach. I just think this feels a lot more collaborative and more relatable to the players. And you're much closer to this than I am. But, I pay attention to social media. The players' voices, they were heard. Max Crosby, et cetera, with Antonio being upped. And I think they're going to like these coaches because these are known as players' coaches, everyone that we're talking about today.
I got to ask you, because Raider Nation is wanting to know, with Kliff Kingsbury looking like he's going to be in the mix, potentially be the offensive coordinator for the Silver and Black, what do you think that means for the Raiders and the quarterback? Do you think that they may go after that big-time franchise quarterback that could be in the draft?
I think, you look at the draft, it's a pretty good quarterback draft with Jaden Daniels, with May in North Carolina, and, of course, with Caleb Williams. It's just a matter of, are the Bears drafting a quarterback? I kind of think they will. I think it'll be Caleb Williams. But, what's available to the Raiders? I got to think that, they like, some of the guys in the quarterback room. They had a good rookie last season with Aiden O'Connell, but, do they need to aim higher? I think they're going to be, maybe it's not free agency, but it kind of feels like draft. Sure. Yeah, if they can get in position for one of the better quarterbacks. I just don't think they want to settle. If it's not someone that's franchise-changing, then maybe they need to go forward with O'Connell and see if that's the best move. But, I don't know, what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins or, his preferences. Is he going to stay with the Vikings? It all remains to be seen. But a lot up in the air with the quarterback market, very unresolved. There's Baker Mayfield. There's a lot of guys out there. And I'm sure they'll think about it. But I'm not privy to what their plan is, so I don't want to speculate too much because I like to stick with what I know, or at least I'm kind of sure about, too, instead of, getting way off into speculation. That leads to the aggregators, and they think, he said that could happen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say I don't know. Is the honest answer. I don't know what they're doing at quarterback at all.
No, I hear you. That's good, and that's why we go to you. Again, Aaron Wilson, KPRC2, here with us on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. I wanted to go back real quick to Antonio Pierce. I mean, look, he's a first-time head coach, but he's bringing in Marvin Lewis that he has a good relationship with, potentially Kliff Kingsbury. What does that tell you about a guy like him? He brought in Tom Coughlin during the regular season along with Marvin Lewis. What does that tell you about him with the confidence and the humility to be able to lean on guys that have been there, done that, when he knows that, hey, I don't have as much experience as those guys do?
Well, I think it shows a humble and introspective nature because and also that you're not insecure, or that you're not going to be threatened by, oh, well, this guy, maybe he outshines you. No, I don't think he thinks that way. I think he's got a lot of confidence, but I also think that he's very team-oriented. Mm-hmm. And you cannot succeed when you have a selfish head coach. It's got to be someone that wants to have a collegial atmosphere. And I believe that's exactly what he is building right now, which is something where these guys look forward to coming to work, bouncing ideas off each other, and trying to get to the best outcome, which is winning games and trying to restore what the Raiders want to be all about, which is what they say, commitment to excellence. So
right.
I think with this coach, they have the right spirit, and we'll see if they have the right plan. That's always, there's a really thin line between winning and losing in this league. But I like the attitude. I think it says a lot about Antonio. But everyone that talks about Antonio, they talk about how he was a good teammate with the Giants. He was pretty tough. He wasn't maybe, like Ray Lewis, that type of head knocker, but he was a good linebacker. And he was smart. He was a smart player. He was respected. And I think that these qualities give him a chance to be a good head coach. And he's off to a good start. And now he's got to keep that momentum going. And, you've got a growing and passionate fan base there. Of course, the Raiders have always had a lot of fans out there on the West Coast. And I know that the games I've covered out there, I think it's exciting. They put a lot into the halftime show.
Yeah.
I think the last time I was there, it was Iggy Azalea, Kelly Clarkson. And I don't think they're doing all this to waste money. They're trying to sell tickets, win games, make some money.
So there you go. That was the conversation I had with Aaron Wilson on my radio show on Thursday, talking about Kliff Kingsbury, talking about Marvin Lewis, talking about Antonio Pierce, and just kind of what he thinks, the direction that the team is going and how he feels pretty good about all these hires. So I thought that was really good to hear. It was great that he was able to get back to me right away, right after he sent out that tweet, and boom, was able to get him on the show. So I thought that, like I said, was some good stuff to hear. Aaron Wilson from my radio show on Thursday, Unnecessary Roughness. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll get to that right after I tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including LinkedIn Jobs. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, and that's 1 billion with a B, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is quick and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I also want to tell you about DoorDash, and you never know when you're going to need DoorDash. You could be up in the middle of the night working on a podcast, working on a radio show, working on homework, doing whatever you need, and you just need to get some food. Well, who wants to leave out, especially in Vegas lately? Man, the weather's been crazy. It's the rain and the wind. It's been nasty. So why don't you just let someone else get out in there instead of you? Well, DoorDash is the way to go. If you don't have DoorDash, the app on your phone already, well, then you are like me and you're in the Stone Age, right? So you go ahead and make that happen. Matter of fact, download it right now. Get 50% off with the $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. And you can get anything, right? I always like the pizzas, wings, they have Chick-fil-A options. There's so many different options on there. I can go through every kind of restaurant that you could think of, any kind of fast food that you could think of, even grocery stores. You want to go to your local store? We have Smith's right around the corner. If I want them to go get me some produce, right? Maybe I'm going to make a fancy salad. I'm not. But if you were going to, I could, you can go do that, make that happen as well. They have all the options right there. It is super easy to do. Again, all you have to do, especially with, I know there's no football games except for the Pro Bowl coming up this weekend, but there's some good hoop games coming up. With those games coming up, you don't want to miss any of the action. Just DoorDash whatever you need. Again, you'll get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Use the promo code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget to use LOCK23 for 50% off of the $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's get into the first call. Lodi Cali Raider. He's calling to talk about the hiring of Kliff Kingsbury and brings up Hugh Jackson and a potential vet quarterback for the Raiders. Here he is, Lodi Cali Raider.
Hey, what up, Q? Lodi Raider from Lodi, California here. Super pumped up about Kliff Kingsbury being our OC. I think he's going to bring something new and different that we've been needing in our offense. And I really like the idea of Hugh Jackson being a senior assistant. He's always been a creative as an offensive coordinator. He's always been very, very good. So another quality add, along with obviously Coach Marvin Lewis being an assistant head coach. I mean, Coach Antonio Pierce is stacking them. And what are your thoughts about Kliff Kingsbury and then marrying back up with Baker Mayfield? I mean, he can make every NFL throw, and he's also very mobile. So your thoughts, Q, on the whole deal? Appreciate what you do. Coach from Lodi, out.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a good hire. It's not quite done yet, but Kliff Kingsbury, creative offensive mind. I think he could do some good things. You mentioned the senior assistant with Hugh Jackson. I know that he's very interested. I know that is not a done deal as well, but he would jump quick, fast, in a hurry to get to Las Vegas and be part of the staff there, and I think that'd be a hell of a staff. As far as Baker Mayfield, honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I just think that Tampa Bay is not going to let him get out of town. He's probably going to get franchise tag or they're going to money whip him, right? They like what he did in Tampa Bay, and so I think that they're going to hold on to him. If not, I could definitely see him being a guy as a veteran quarterback that the Raiders are interested in. I don't know what his relationship with Kliff Kingsbury is like. You know, he was a walk-on at Texas Tech, and then he left and walked on at Oklahoma, so I'm not sure what that relationship is like, but I'm sure at some point these guys are professionals. They can make it work. But, yeah, I wouldn't have any problem with Baker Mayfield. Hell, he proved what he could do, helping Tampa Bay get to the playoffs this past season. So, the playoffs is always the first goal, and clearly he can make that happen. But, yeah, I just don't think he gets out of Tampa Bay. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Brent in Vegas. Said, yo, what's up, Q? It's Brent in Vegas. Just a quick text here. I heard you mention Joe Milton on Wednesday's show, and I didn't realize he was headed to the draft. But now that I know that, I say we took a look at him because I actually watched a decent amount of Tennessee games last year, and I was impressed. I like him if we can't get one of the big-name quarterbacks at 13. Go Raiders. And thanks for the text, Brent. And honestly, I think Joe Milton will probably be a later round pick. You know, I'm not too sure which one. I've talked to a few different, draft guys, and like I talked to my guy, Teron Davenport from ESPN. I talked to him the first day of the practices of the Senior Bowl, and he said that Joe Milton he had a really strong arm, as you know from watching Tennessee football, but he was overthrowing a lot of guys and just looked like he was putting too much on it. So I think he needs to just kind of calm down. We'll see what happens with the game. We'll see what happens when he goes to the combine. But I do know he's a dynamic dude. He has a hell of an arm. I'm just interested to see how his game translates to the NFL. But he could be a guy that, later in the draft, maybe even if the Raiders were to go and get real crazy and go and draft 2 quarterbacks. Like we've seen it before happen with Washington back in the day when they drafted RG3 and Kirk Cousins. I mean, we could see it. Maybe that's a scenario as well. He's a much later round pick, and they go ahead and get him just to, have him on the roster as well. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. And, yeah, shout out to Josh Heupel there in the Tennessee Volunteers. Up next, got a call from Raider Rez in East L.A. He's calling to talk about Justin Fields, brings up Michael Penix, Bo Nix, and more. Here he is, Raider Rez.
Hey, Q. It's Raider Rez in East L.A. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm actually calling because I want to push back a little bit about your thoughts on Justin Fields. Look, with every day, it's becoming probably more and more clear that the chances of Raiders moving up into the top 1, 2, or 3 positions in the draft are slimmer and slimmer, right? Those 3 teams picking 1, 2, and 3, they all need quarterbacks. It's really unlikely that any one of them is going to give up on these top 3 prospects, no matter how desperately Raider Nation wants Jaden Daniels, and I totally agree. But let's say we stick at 13, and we do pick up Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I mean, look, we all love Aiden O'Connell, but, he's still basically 1 year removed from being a rookie. Do we want essentially two rookies in the quarterback room? Do we want another rookie throwing to Devontae Adams in what could possibly be his final year as a Raider? And I'm with you. I don't think he goes anywhere. I mean, he's a very valuable trade subject, but I mean, you know, he is a Raider, and I don't want to see him going anywhere. And that is selfish. I agree. And so we gotta have some kind of vet in the quarterback room. And Justin Fields, I mean, you know, we get him for this 2-year rookie deal that he's still on. It's a pretty affordable deal to see if he works out for 2 years. Doesn't seem like that great of a risk. Maybe he does. Maybe he's great. Maybe he takes us to the promised land. Maybe he doesn't. At the very least, that gives a Penix or a Bo Nix 1, maybe 2 years to become the quarterback that, you know, some people think that they could become. So it just bringing in Justin Fields for the cheap deal that we could get him for 2 years, not that much, like 2 years, like what, a little more than $30 million, kind of seems like a no-brainer to me. So I'm curious where your hesitation lies. I get that he's not your preference. That preference is Jaden Daniels. Hell, he's everyone's preference. But barring that, why not go for Justin Fields? Thanks, buddy. Love listening to you, and can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Thank you for the call, my man. And I think Fields could be an option, right? He's just not my first option. I'd rather see the Raiders draft their own guy, even if it's Penix or Bo Nix. And I know those are rookies, but you can still add a veteran to the room, right? I don't know. I mean, you can add Russell Wilson if you really want to. Again, he's not my first option either. But, you know, there's different things that they can do. Russell Wilson will be cheap, though, you know, because Denver, when they release him, they're going to end up paying most of his salary wherever he plays in 2024. So he could be an option. You know, again, I said I don't think Fields is out of the question. It's not like I'm just anti-Justin Fields. I just know that you have to trade for him. You'll have to pick up his 5th-year option because you wouldn't trade for him and not pick up his 5th-year option. And then you got to make a decision on, are you going to give him a contract worth $40 to $50 million a year because that's going to be the going rate by that time, or are you going to let him walk? And if you let him walk, then, you know, you gave up a couple draft picks, you gave up, you know, $22-something million for the 5th-year option, and what do you have to show for it, right? You might still be in the same position when you can go and get your guy, if you in fact can get your guy in the draft, and have a guy for 4 years for like $40 million guaranteed. I mean, think about Bryce Young. He was number 1 overall last year. His contract, 4 years, $39 million fully guaranteed, with the 5th-year option. So I much rather, and of course they had a signing bonus on top of that. But I mean, for the most part, $39 million guaranteed is a lot better than a 1-year deal worth $40 million or something like that. So that's just my options. But like I said, I don't think any option is off the table. I don't think any option should be off the table. I think they're going to exhaust all options, especially with Kliff Kingsbury in the mix, kind of have an idea of the quarterbacks that he likes to work with and kind of have a good idea of what direction the Raiders may be going. So thanks, Raider Reds, for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Stabler's Ghost. What's up, Q? Stabler's Ghost from the Northeast. We just hired Kingsbury, and I'm pretty pumped about that. The only quarterback moves that will be made are Williams, Daniels, or Fields. If we want Caleb, we need to get to number 1, but if we can get to the 2nd pick, we could take Daniels or Williams if he slides. I would honestly be okay with Justin Fields also, and I think his experience may be better fit in Kliff's scheme. We have connections to both guys and Fields, actually, so I see it as a win-win in any way you can slice it. It's a great day to be a part of Raider Nation. You keep doing you, Q. Raiders. That's from Stabler's Ghost. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know why my gut feeling tells me that the Raiders are going to make a splash. And again, it's just my gut feeling. I've not heard that anywhere. I just kind of feel like that they're going to make a big move. They're going to finally go and say, that's our guy. We identify him. We're going to do whatever it takes to go get him. And I'm okay with that. I've said before that I wasn't a big fan of that. I don't want to give up a lot of draft capital. But if you could find your guy that could be your guy for the next 10 years, then I'm okay with it. So we'll see what they do. But I don't know. And maybe it's just wishful thinking. But I do feel like that they're going to try everything they can to get to the top of the draft and go get their guy, whether that's Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or other. Right, and it could be. Or, you know, maybe Bo Nix and Michael Penix is a guy that they look at and they're like, you know what? We can use him in this system, and we're going to use him like this. And that could be an option as well, and then they don't have to move up just like that. But thank you so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Got time for a couple more. There's a call from Santa Cruz Raider in the 831. He's calling to talk about my obsession with quarterbacks that are having mobility. LOL. He's just having fun with it. Here he is, Santa Cruz Raider in the 831.
Hey, Q. This is Santa Cruz Raider calling from the 831. Listen to your show every day. I haven't missed one for the past 2 years since my oldest son turned me on to your show. I was cracking up today listening to the message from the on the podcast regarding your obsession with a mobile quarterback, which made me laugh. Everybody must have a short memory, or maybe I'm just old, but can they not remember Gannon? Gannon wasn't exactly a runner, but he knew how to get out of the way. He could scramble. He knew when there was an opening. He didn't sit there like Carr would and take a sack when there was daylight in front of him. So I understand, and I agree with you 100%. We need a mobile quarterback, at least someone that knows how to get out of the way. Even Purdy did it last week. He did it when he needed to for the 49ers. So keep on rocking the show, Q. I love it. I listen every day, like I said, and next time I'm in Vegas for a game next year, I'll come by and see you.
Thanks for the call, my man. I appreciate you. That's funny. Yeah, my obsession. Why am I so obsessed? That's funny. But shout out to you, man. Shout out to Santa Cruz. I used to love to go out there when I lived in Seaside, California. It was awesome. And I'm glad that you get it. I'm glad that you get it. It's not an obsession. It's just my preference and what I think that the Raiders need. But, I want to see a quarterback that can help himself a little something. But, whatever. And look, like you mentioned, Purdy, yeah, he used his legs in that game, the 49ers against the Lions, and they needed all 51 yards that he picked up. So that's what I'm talking about, man. It ain't got to be no 1,100 yards, which is very Lamar Jackson-like, and even though I think that Jaden Daniels has a hell of an arm too. But, I mean, look, he's going to run all over the yard, but he also could throw the ball. So, that might be more than what this staff wants. They might want a guy who's in the pocket more times than not, but also has the ability to get out of there when he gets in trouble. Thanks so much for that call. I appreciate you. Finally, we close things out with a text from Black Hole Jr. in the Bay. It says, Q, it's Black Hole Jr. out the Bay. Is Kliff. If Kliff is going to be their coordinator, I can say my gut is saying that we'll absolutely go up in the draft and go get their guy. Whether it be Jaden Daniels or Caleb, one of them will be part of the Raiders. Time will tell, but Kliff has gone and been part of coaching some big-name young quarterbacks, almost a guarantee in my books, whether people agree or not. That's Black Hole Jr. in the Bay. It's kind of what I was saying as well, kind of feeling that same way. So really good stuff, man. Thanks so much. I think it should be an exciting time. Again, the Kliff Kingsbury deal is not done yet. Well, by the time you're listening to this, it might be. He might have already signed on the dotted line, and the Raiders might have already tweeted it out and sent an email. Maybe we're having a press conference right now, for all I know. But I think it's exciting times, and especially if they're able to bring Hugh Jackson back into the mix, I think that'd be a great, nice offensive staff. And the defense, you already know, is on point, especially with Marvin Lewis as well, being the assistant head coach. AP's defensive, Patrick Graham is defensive. I think that they can have a real nasty defense on both sides of the ball, and that would be awesome for the return of the Raiders. So thanks so much for that. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the feedback. And that's going to do it for today's show. And that's going to do it for the week. So Raider Nation, enjoy the weekend. Next week, buckle up. Everything's going to come live from Radio Row at Mandalay Bay starting on Monday. And so, man, it's going to be stones to the wall for real. But we're going to have a lot of fun leading into Super Bowl 58. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.